For weeks, Atlético Madrid believed it still controlled the situation. The contract was secure, the transfer door was closed, and the anger surrounding its superstar appeared manageable. Then, one disturbing development changed the entire meaning of what had been happening behind the scenes. Now the supporters are furious. The club is facing a threat it may no longer be able to contain, and Julian Álvarez could be approaching a decision from which there is no return. Atlético had every reason to believe it held the power. Alvarez remains under contract until June 2030. His release clause stands at an extraordinary €500 million. Club officials had already rejected Barcelona's approach and publicly warned that their striker would not be allowed to strengthen a direct Spanish rival. Diego Simeone supported that position. Atlético CEO Miguel Ángel Gil Marín insisted that Alvarez remains central to the club's future. Even offers worth €150 million or €200 million were publicly dismissed. The message appeared absolute. Alvarez was staying. But the player had already delivered a very different message. During the World Cup, Alvarez admitted that he had spoken with the necessary people at Atlético and believed a transfer would be best for everyone. He also spoke about fulfilling his dream. That dream was Barcelona. Barcelona wanted him. Alvarez wanted the move. Atlético refused to negotiate. What followed became deeply personal. Atlético accused Barcelona of behaving improperly and reported the Catalan club to the Spanish Football Federation. Gil Marín criticized Barcelona president Joan Laporta and accused Alvarez's agent of advising the player badly. The agent responded by effectively accusing Atlético's leadership of lying about promises made behind closed doors. A transfer dispute had become an open war. Arsenal then appeared as a possible escape route. The Premier League champions remained interested, and sporting director Andrea Berta maintained contact with his former club. Atlético appeared more willing to discuss a sale to England for around €150 million. Yet one enormous obstacle remained. Alvarez had opened the door only to Barcelona. Arsenal wanted a player who genuinely believed in Mikel Arteta's project. It had no intention of spending one of the largest transfer fees in Premier League history on somebody who viewed London as his consolation prize. Alvarez, therefore, found himself trapped between the club he wanted and the only club Atlético might accept. Then the supporters delivered their verdict. What happened inside the Metropolitano showed that this dispute had already moved beyond transfers, contracts, and money. Atlético's own supporters had decided that Alvarez no longer belonged to them. Before Atlético's match against Villarreal, Alvarez's name was greeted with whistles. The reaction returned when he began warming up. When he entered the match in the 66th minute, the noise became deafening. Every touch was judged. Every movement became another opportunity for the crowd to express its anger. Supporters chanted in defense of Atlético and against players they considered mercenaries. Alvarez had wanted to leave for Barcelona. The Metropolitano wanted him to understand what that decision had cost him. After the 2-2 draw, Atlético's players walked towards the supporters. Alvarez went in the opposite direction. He crossed the pitch alone with his head down and disappeared into the tunnel while the whistles continued around him. A scarf was reportedly thrown near his feet. The club later explained that Alvarez had been instructed to leave without approaching the fans. It may have been intended to protect him from another confrontation. Instead, it produced a devastating image. One of Atlético's most valuable players walked towards an empty dressing room while his teammates remained together on the pitch. The separation was complete. Jan Oblak admitted that the situation was uncomfortable for everybody. People close to Alvarez reportedly described him as devastated by the supporters' treatment. Atlético still expected him to train and prepare for the next match. Simeone remained willing to reintegrate him. The manager believed performances could eventually repair the damage. Then Alvarez disappeared. When Atletico returned to training after 2 days away, Alvarez did not appear at the training complex. The official explanation sounded harmless. The club said he had endured a bad night, felt unwell, and was unable to train. Illness can affect any player. A missed session alone proves nothing. But after everything that had happened, few people viewed the timing as ordinary. Alvarez had publicly requested a transfer. Atletico had blocked his chosen destination. Supporters had humiliated him. He had walked off the pitch alone. Days later, he was suddenly too unwell to report for training. That sequence has created the brutal suspicion now surrounding Alvarez. Was he genuinely ill, or had Atletico just witnessed the first excuse in a carefully hidden boycott? There is no public medical evidence proving that Alvarez invented his symptoms. There is also no confirmed accusation from Atletico that he refused to train. The controversy lives inside the timing. A modern player boycott rarely begins with somebody announcing that he will never play again. That would expose the player to disciplinary action, fines, and accusations of breaching his contract. It can begin inside areas that are far more difficult to challenge. A bad night, a stomach problem, a lack of fitness, mental exhaustion, a small physical complaint that suddenly feels serious enough to prevent training. Each explanation can be genuine. Each one can also provide an unhappy player with another day away from a club he no longer wants to represent. That is why Alvarez's absence matters. Atletico can reject Barcelona. It can refuse €200 million. It can point towards the contract and the €500 million release clause. It cannot manufacture motivation. If Alvarez has mentally finished with Atletico, forcing him to remain could leave Simeone with an enormously expensive striker who is physically present and emotionally absent. The supporters have already shown that they will analyze everything he does. If he misses another training session, the boycott accusations will intensify. If he is ruled out against Sevilla, every detail of Atletico's explanation will be questioned. If he plays and performs badly, supporters may accuse him of withholding effort. If he avoids challenges, they will question his commitment. If he stops celebrating, they will claim his heart is already in Barcelona. Alvarez may now find that every possible action is used against him. Yet the accusation that he is beginning to create excuses presents an even greater danger. Once supporters believe a player is faking illness, the relationship becomes almost impossible to repair. A genuine injury will be questioned. A legitimate illness will be mocked. Every absence becomes another supposed act of rebellion. Atletico may have succeeded in blocking the transfer, but the club could now be discovering that keeping Alvarez and controlling Alvarez are two completely different things. Arsenal continues to watch. Reports suggest the English club is ready to respond if Alvarez finally abandons his Barcelona dream and gives a clear commitment to joining Arteta. At the moment, Arsenal is not optimistic. It will not begin serious negotiations while the player remains focused on Barcelona. This leaves Alvarez with a brutal decision. He can accept Arsenal and escape Atletico before the deadline. He can remain at the Metropolitano and attempt to rebuild a relationship that already appears shattered. Or he can continue applying pressure while hoping Atletico eventually decides that selling him to Barcelona is less damaging than keeping him. That third possibility is where the boycott theory becomes explosive. One missed training session changes nothing. Several absences could create a crisis. Atletico would then have to decide whether Alvarez was genuinely unavailable or deliberately making himself unreliable. Proving the difference would be extremely difficult. The club could order medical examinations. It could demand daily updates. It could warn him about his contractual responsibilities. Alvarez could continue insisting that every complaint was genuine. The argument would move from football into trust, and almost all trust has already disappeared. If you want the real stories behind football's biggest battles, hit the like button and subscribe to the World Cup Whistleblower, because Alvarez's next appearance could reveal whether this was one missed session or the beginning of something much darker. Atletico's next match provides the first major test. If Alvarez trains normally and plays against Sevilla, the club can attempt to calm the situation. Simeone can protect him publicly and ask the supporters to judge him through his football. But another unexplained absence would transform suspicion into fury. The Metropolitano has already shown how it feels about his transfer demand. Those supporters will show even less patience if they believe Alvarez is now inventing reasons to avoid the club entirely. Atletico wanted to make an example of Barcelona. It wanted to prove that no rival, agent or player could force its hand. Alvarez may now be testing that power in a way Atletico never expected. The club can close the transfer door. It can demand that he honors his contract. It can refuse every offer connected to Barcelona. But it cannot erase what happened against Villarreal. It cannot force supporters to welcome him. And it cannot stop every future illness from becoming part of the boycott accusation. Officially, Julian Álvarez missed one training session because he felt unwell. Unofficially, the battle for his future may have entered its most dangerous stage. Because if the excuses have already started, Atlético Madrid could be holding a €150 million superstar who has decided he will do everything possible to avoid playing for them again.